Thank you so much for your opportunity. Let me ask first about the UNDP New Activities. It is about 5 decades the UNDP is working in Afghanistan, but especially what are new?
Well, the most important new thing is the direction towards playing our role as the SDG integrator in Afghanistan. And when we say SDG integrator, it has 2 main dimensions. The first one is to integrate the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, in national planning and budgeting and programming for development. The other aspect is to help integrate the UN system around the SDGs and build the one UN that Afghanistan deserves. And in this role, we support the resident coordinator, who is supposed to be and who is leading the UN system towards SDG integration.
But what is the huge difference between the past activities of UNDP?
Well, the huge difference is the focus more on a diversified, very diverse portfolio that we are moving towards now. UNDP nowadays is building its program for 2022-2026. First, it's centered around the SDGs, but also it has 3 main pillars. Those 3 main pillars are sustainability, prosperity, and peace. In prosperity, we are focusing on creating the market building objective of the AMPDF. Market building in the sense creating the market space and the product space for Afghanistan products, creating value-added jobs for Afghanistan youth, creating the financing mechanisms that provide Afghanistan private sector access to finance, creating mechanisms to support the informal Afghanistan economy. Just to give you an example, we are setting up a fund for women-owned small and medium enterprises. Now, those women-owned small and medium enterprises are mainly formal enterprises. There are around 2,200 formal enterprises owned by women in Afghanistan, but there are 50,000 informal enterprises owned by women in this great country. So we have to target both sides, and this is what we are doing today. We are focusing on young people, so we are building an innovation fund for youth, people with new ideas, people with digital ideas, that we can support and provide them access to finance, technical assistance, training and capacity building, in addition to helping creating the right regulatory framework for such innovative ideas to grow in Afghanistan. In sustainability, we are working now to make sure that renewable energy is a large part of Afghanistan's energy mix. We are working on the question of climate change, which you can see Afghanistan is very badly affected by climate change. Either droughts or flash floods or all types of climate change disasters where we need to support the country. So what I'm trying to say is that Afghanistan's UNDP today is a more diverse, closer to national priorities, and also there is a big difference from the past is the way we implement our projects. Our projects should be nationally owned, should be managed by national institutions, should be part of the national priority programs, should be implemented by Tashkil staff as much as we can. So yes, it is a new UNDP in Afghanistan, but that's the UNDP that Afghanistan deserves. Of course, Afghanistan deserves much more than that, but that's what we are trying to do.
As you mentioned about the implementation of the project, in which mechanism will you implement these projects and what are the role of Afghan government?
Well, that's exactly where we are going. First of all, we will not create these program management units that we used to set up in ministries, and when the project is over, they pull out, without leaving capacity behind them. We would like to make sure that the capacity is within the ministry and that it is the staff of the line ministries at the Kabul level or at the local level are the ones implementing. Also, we will try to bring as much as possible of the financial resources we have on budget, not off budget. This will take some time, but we will prepare the on budget funding of UNDP projects.
But you mentioned about the capacity challenges in Afghanistan. According UNDP's Human Development Report, Afghanistan was at the bottom of human development in 2020. So how you manage this?
Well, it is because
Development in 2020. So how you manage this?
Well, it is because Afghanistan is in the bottom of the Human Development Index in 2020 that we need to build those human resources. And if we continue the old ways of substituting capacity rather than building capacity, we will not achieve much. So the idea is to work with the national institutions to make sure they actually have the capacity to implement. And human development, as you know, the Human Development Index is a complex composite index of poverty, of incomes, of health, and of education. So the UN system, not just UNDP, the UN system and all donors should focus on those three very important areas.
But after 2 decades of international assistance in Afghanistan, still the poverty level in Afghanistan is more than 50. You think who is the blame of this? International communities or Afghan government?
It's not a question of blame. You know, the international community put billions, tens of billions of money and also blood in Afghanistan. The government also has been trying its best. But I think what is the most challenging obstacle to achieving the poverty reduction goal, for example, or any other goals in Afghanistan, was what I call the projectization of development. You know, development is not just a collection of projects. Development is a strategy, is a vision, is a monitoring and evaluation system, is nationally owned implementation modalities. It is the government being responsible for its budget and accountable to the people for that budget implementation. Now, when you have these projectization, the fragmentation of development projects, when you have these silos, even within UNDP, we used to have different silos. People who work on environment did not know what people working on livelihood were doing. But you cannot separate livelihood from environment. So I think it's time to move towards a new integrated approach to development. Also, don't forget that most of the assistance that came to Afghanistan went to humanitarian action that allowed the country to move along the human development road.
In new strategy of UNDP, still poverty is the first step that UNDP should fight against poverty in Afghanistan. What is the specific new plan or new program for fight to at least decrease the level of poverty in Afghanistan?
Well, look, UNDP's programs in Afghanistan, if you take them as funding, total funding over the next 4 or 5 years will be less than $1 billion. That's less than $200 million a year. If you estimate what's the impact of $200 million on Afghan economy or on poverty, it is minimal. But if we use that money well to make sure that the national priority programs that help reduce poverty are effectively managed and efficiently implemented, this is where the success will come from. And that's why the idea of market building in the AMPDF2 is so important. Because without decent jobs, there is no poverty reduction. Without social protection, there is no poverty reduction. Without innovation, there is no poverty reduction. Without the provision of public services of high quality, like health and education, there is no poverty reduction. So our job is to focus on these issues and focus on the MPPs that achieve these matters in Afghanistan.
But you are funding some projects in those areas that they are working with poverty. There will maybe no transparency. Will there any team to monitor them because in Afghanistan the level of corruption right now is so high.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, I am not very satisfied with the level of transparency of some of our projects. And we are working very hard now with the government, with the highest levels of the government, who are really committed to ensuring full transparency in the projects, who are really committed that every dollar goes to where it should go. And therefore, we are seeing a new spirit, we are seeing a new direction in the way we deal with the government. And they are very responsive. I think, and also don't forget, we as UNDP should be responsible for ensuring that transparency. I can assure you that we are doing 100% effort to make sure our projects are transparent.
At the high level, how you see the activities of Afghan government? Is there any commitment to fight against corruption in Afghanistan?
Yes, I can say that with confidence, because every project we propose in the area of fighting corruption, we see excellent response. And most importantly, we see the government taking initiatives. They are the ones who are calling us and say, we want you to work in these following areas to fight corruption, to digitize our procurement, to ensure that we have very effective audit supreme authority in order to fight corruption.
You mentioned before about the climate change. Is there any specific budget for Afghanistan from the UNDP side?
What UNDP does is to match between available resources and the needs of the country. So, for example, we are now working with the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environmental Facility to build a portfolio for Afghanistan's projects in this field. At the moment, we have a portfolio of about $40 million. We are working extensively with the government, with the National Environmental Protection Agency and other government institutions to build a portfolio of around $200 million for this particular area. Also, we are trying to bring the private sector to work in areas of renewable energy and other projects. For example, we are helping the government in setting up the National Environmental Climate Change and Sustainability Fund. And this fund will mobilize national resources and international resources, and will also leverage private sector resources for the question of climate change and sustainability. That's a very interesting project, and we are very happy to be contributing to it.
In last year, COVID-19 also affected Afghanistan. That the UNDP recently reported that the coronavirus have driven Afghanistan into recession, and the country needs 30% more aid from the international community. Over the next 5 years, what has been done so far?
Well, we highlighted that challenge, but let's face it, we don't expect an increase of 30% of grants. Grants around the world are going down because donor countries themselves are facing tremendous challenges in their own economies. Actually, we were also happily surprised when the Geneva Conference committed $1.3 billion a year for Afghanistan. That is a very important, $3.3 billion a year for Afghanistan over the next 4 years. That is a very important statement that the international community still wants to support Afghanistan. However, it also was clear after COVID-19 that business as usual doesn't work anymore, that we need immediate social protection systems, that we need a recovery plan for Afghanistan to get out of the slump it finds itself in because of COVID-19. You know, COVID-19's impact on SDGs, for example, is tremendous. It actually increases the cost, the annual cost of achieving the SDGs by $300 million. So we need to move forward. We need to find different sources of economic activities. I don't believe that the SDG in Afghanistan is $20 billion only. There is a lot of informal economy that we don't calculate. And therefore, We need to take advantage of the demographic window where you have young people. They are a tremendous force for economic growth if we use them well. So there are short-term measures that have to be taken, and there are medium-term visions and strategies that have to be developed and implemented.
But the Geneva supported mission was conditionally for Afghanistan to fight strongly against corruption in Afghanistan.
Well, if this is the condition, we should all be happy about it. I think everyone in Afghanistan should be and are happy that there are such conditions about corruption. We all know that if corruption continues, there is not going to be development. There is not going to be trust in government, and there is not going to be investments, serious investments to create jobs for Afghan young people. Therefore, it's a good condition in a way that we want to fight corruption in order to provide funding to Afghanistan.
In 2014, UNDP had some projects to fund election in Afghanistan. Is there any plan for your new strategy to support Afghanistan upcoming elections?
Well, you may know that even in 2019 elections, UNDP, the United Nations Election Support Program continues. We supported technically the 2019 elections. This is a UNAMA-led project where UNDP provides technical implementation support. We are now also, we have 1 year extension until the end of 2021 to prepare the next 4-year strategy and to build a new project to support the capacity building of national elections institutions like the IEC and the EEC.
But right now, this is not clear that UNDP will support Afghan upcoming election or no?
If there are upcoming elections and that's an Afghan decision, we will be there to support, of course. We have the project and we have the resources.
There is a lot of section in NDGs that UNDP is focusing on that. One of them is quality of education. What does you mean in quality education? How UNDP implement the projects on this section?
Well, look, in the SDGs there are specialized, of course, the UN is a diverse institution with the specialized agencies, programs and funds. UNDP supports the integration of SDGs in national planning. For example, we provide currently support to the Ministry of Education in integrating the SDGs in their plans, in their budgets, even in the new curriculum that is being developed in the new educational systems. We are not an agency that invests in education. There are other agencies that do so, like UNICEF and UNESCO, but we are responsible for bringing the SDGs to the education sector and to the health sector and other sectors.
UNDP also has established a policy lab. In policy lab, what kind of policies you are implementing or designing for Afghanistan?
Well, I need to stress, we don't design policies for Afghanistan. We build Afghanistan capacities to design policies for Afghanistan. That's one. Secondly, we are providing a number of support to the government. First of all, in the area of economic modeling. So we just built a model, a single country model for Afghanistan. That model allows the government to make different policy choices. It can simulate the impact of any policy decision on other sectors, on the SDGs, and on poverty levels in the country. That's one tool we offered the government. The other tool is the monitoring and evaluation for the AMPDF and for the SDGs in Afghanistan. The third tool we are offering is a platform for Sdg financing. As I said, we are building a platform for the Afghan government to have a wider choice of financing its development instead of relying heavily just on grant and aid. So this is what the policy lab will be providing. It will be publishing regularly policy notes like we did for COVID-19 on challenges and issues facing Afghanistan. We will provide policy advice to the government, but it is the government of Afghanistan that makes the policy.
But how you see the economic policy of Afghan government? You had a meeting with Mr. Ghani on 22nd of June or July. You mentioned that you are supporting the economic policies of Afghan government.
Well, I have to say it was a great honor for me to meet His Excellency the President. You know, His Excellency has a clear vision for the future economy of Afghanistan, and the idea of linking market building with state building and peace building is mainly his idea. We are very keen on that, and because of that, we built our new structure on sustainability, prosperity, and peace to match these three priorities. We will be providing policy advice, training, capacity building, institutional support in those areas. In economic policy, for example, we will be looking at, as I said, how to simulate the impact of any economic policy on the SDGs. We'll be looking at how do we enhance the financial sector in order to provide higher access of finance to small and medium enterprises. For example, you know, in Afghanistan, the ratio of lending to capital in Afghan banks is the lowest in the world. It's only 2%. The average ratio of lending to capital ratio in least developed countries is 17%. And if we manage to increase that ratio in Afghanistan from 2% to 17%, the access to finance for the companies, for the private sector, that we will support the government in implementing.
But the level of poverty is the result of economic policies of Afghan government. Do you think it is workable because you have PhD about economic system? Maybe you know better about Afghanistan.
I can't say I know better about Afghanistan. I'm just learning about Afghanistan. All I can say, my dear friend, is that the reason why Afghanistan poverty is so high is a very complex reason. It is war, it is lack of security, it is terrorism, it is corruption, it is weak institutions, it is sometimes, as I said, the projectization of development, the fragmentation of development. So it was not short of lack of resources. There was plenty of money coming to Afghanistan. But if that money is not channeled through clear strategies with measurable indicators, the result is what we see today. So if we fix those problems, we cannot fix the peace problem. We can help in fixing it. We cannot fix the terrorism problem. We can fix and help fix the institutional capacities, for example. I am optimistic. And let me say, in our business, it doesn't really matter whether you are an optimist or a pessimist. You have to be determined. We are here to support Afghanistan. We have nothing else to do. I cannot say, it's bad, it didn't work out, otherwise I'll close the shop. And we are not here to close. We are here to stay and to support.
As you're concerned about insecurity in Afghanistan these days, United States and Afghan government are talking with Taliban to come peace settlement. May I have UNDP's state or reaction about Afghan peace process?
UNDP doesn't work in the diplomatic efforts for peace. Our job is to ensure that the socio-economic conditions for transferring from a war economy to a peace economy are there. And therefore we need to make sure that we address the root causes of conflict, such as poverty, mismanagement of resources, climate change impact, that's one. And second, that we are ready for recovery immediately, so the reintegration, the return of refugees, reintegration of fighters into civilian life, we need to be ready there, that we have enough financing from public and private sector to invest in Afghanistan for peace. It's very important to have a future vision that the Afghans agree on. All I can tell you from my experience in other countries, that when you have an inclusive vision of the new economy after war, it makes all the sides to the conflict change the way they think. They will start thinking we have a place in that future. It's that, and that would change their calculations today. I can only wish the best for the peace process in Afghanistan and express our commitment to support anything that is required from us to support the peace economy in this country.
But unfortunately, Afghanistan is a place of war economy. It means you have to work closely with MOD and MOI.
We work with MOI. We don't work with MOD. We have the, as you know, the Law and Order Trust Fund for Afghanistan. We support the Ministry of Interior Affairs in the salaries of the police force, in the overall ensuring that human rights are respected in the police force, the questions of gender, the whole institutional setup. For example, the citizen service centers that the MOI is building, we are partners in this project. So yes, we would like to see, just like the government would like to see the police force here, a civilian police force that is focusing on providing policing like any other police force in the world, and that is professional and civilian-led police force. We are supporting that strategy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Al Dardari.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.